What if you could stop a crime before it even happened? I'm not talking about a crystal ball. I'm talking about data. Today, we're going to dive into a wild story about how 86 seemingly random security logs were transformed from just noise into an incredible tool that could actually predict a coordinated attack. So our story kicks off in March of 2026, and it starts with a real puzzle. At this one single location, security teams logged 86 separate weird incidents. That's nearly 3 a day. Now, taken by themselves, each one just looked like a random disturbance, just static. But the big question was, were they really random? And this is where it gets really interesting, because look at these clues. We're not talking about simple trespassing here. We're talking about really specific, odd stuff. Groups of people taunting a guard dog for hours on end. Other groups using synchronized hand signals. A super shady transaction happening in the middle of the night. Oh, and the same motorcycle showing up over and over and over again. These are just bizarre, and they seem totally disconnected. So this brings us to the core question, the one that security analysts absolutely had to get right. Were they just dealing with a really unlucky month filled with random troublemakers? Or were all these little digital breadcrumbs actually leading them to something way more organized and way more dangerous? Well, to find out, they had to completely change how they looked at things. They had to stop seeing these as one-off incidents and start treating them like what they were, data points. And that meant systematically gathering every single one of these digital clues. Their number one tool was this, the Security Activity Behavioral Monitoring Form. Now that's a mouthful, but think of it like a digital evidence locker or a detective's notebook. Every single time a guard saw something, no matter how small or insignificant it seemed, it went into this form. And just like that, chaotic human observations became clean, structured data they can actually analyze. And honestly, this was the foundation for everything that came next. And once all that data was in one place, wow. The patterns basically started screaming at them. First up is staggering 92.9% of all 86 incidents had clear signs of surveillance and probing. These people weren't just loitering, they were actively watching. But it didn't stop there. An even higher number, 96.2%, involved coordinated gestures, like those synchronized hand signals between different groups. I mean, come on, that's a huge red flag for coordination. And this next number, this is what really locked in their focus. A full 3/4 of all this activity, all the watching, all the signaling, it was all aimed at one specific vulnerable spot, the vehicle gate. And this chart just makes it crystal clear, right? The vehicle gate wasn't just a popular hangout spot. It was the absolute epicenter of this entire operation. Yeah, sure, other areas saw a little bit of activity, but the intense, overwhelming focus on that gate told the analysts that this was their primary target. Okay, so now we have the what, surveillance and signaling. And we have the where, the vehicle gate. But here's the million-dollar question. Were these things truly connected, or was this whole thing just one massive coincidence? The next step was to find that hidden pattern in the data. So they ran the numbers. And this is the crucial part. They used a statistical test that, to put it simply, proved the connection was real. The odds of all this high-risk activity happening at the vehicle gate by pure chance were practically zero. The data screamed that this connection was absolutely intentional. This was no coincidence. Next, they used another really cool technique that kind of acted like a digital sieve, sorting all 86 incidents into just 2 core motivations. The first was surveillance intent. This bucket held all the planning behaviors, the probing, the signaling, casing the joint. The second was direct hostility. This one was for all the aggressive actions, damaging property, taunting those dogs. So you see, this wasn't chaos. It was a clear 2-step process. First you plan, then you test. So now we know what they were doing and why they were doing it. But believe it or not, the data can help us go even deeper and understand who they are. It was time to build a psychological profile of this invisible threat. By applying behavioral models to their actions, 2 key traits just jumped out. First, nearly 79% showed a driver personality style. That means they're decisive, they're goal-oriented. Second, almost 84% of their actions were attention-seeking. But, and this is important, this wasn't about ego. It was a calculated tactic to test security responses. Taunting the dog wasn't just random cruelty, it was a science experiment to see exactly how fast the guards would react. And with that, the picture was complete. This wasn't the work of random vandals or bored teenagers. No way. This was a patient, coordinated group systematically mapping out the property's weaknesses and testing its defenses, all likely in preparation for something much, much bigger. Now, this is where all that hard work really pays off, because it's not just about understanding a threat that already happened, it's about creating a tool to predict and prevent the next one. So welcome to the Predictive Security Playbook. The analysts boiled everything they learned down into this simple but incredibly powerful equation. It's basically a risk calculator. You start with a really low baseline score, and for every suspicious behavior a guard observes, you add points. And notice this, surveillance is the biggest red flag of all, adding a massive 1.41 points all on its own. Let's just watch it in action. Imagine you're a guard. You see a group at the vehicle gate. Okay, the score jumps from 1.02 to 1.74. Then you notice they're using hand signals. Bam, the score climbs again to 2.63. Finally, you confirm they're actively watching the property. The score skyrockets to 4.04. And just like that, in a matter of seconds, this has gone from a minor event to a critical threat, which triggers an immediate, full-scale escalation. That is data being turned into decisive action right there. And that right there is the ultimate takeaway. This entire process completely transforms security. You're no longer just reacting to a broken lock or an alarm that's already gone off. Instead, you're proactively identifying the threat as it develops, maybe days or even weeks in advance. You're not one step behind anymore. You're one step ahead. You know, it's pretty amazing to think that this whole thing started with just a simple digital form. But by structuring the data and finding those hidden patterns, analysts didn't just decode a threat. They built a tool to predict it. It really leaves you with a powerful question, though. If this level of foresight is possible here, what other invisible patterns are hiding in the data all around us, just waiting for someone to see them?